Hello, welcome back to our video tutorials. And today we're going to continue from where we left off. And this is a series of JavaScript for beginners. I'm Richard from YegoBox. And uh, from the previous videos, we have covered of how to install some tools and Node.js and so on. If you haven't seen the video, please go back and see the videos. Today we are going to continue from where we left off. From the last time we covered the comment in JavaScript, which can be done like this. And we have also covered the block comment. So block comment are used when you want to comment the multiple line of code. So we have covered the comment from the previous um, videos. So now, in today's videos, we're going also to cover the use strict. So what is the use of strict means? So we have multiple versions of JavaScript, and all of them are not the latest JavaScript, which means sometimes you may need to use the latest cool JavaScript features, such as classes, use of modules, and so on. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that the browser is strict to use this latest feature? And that's where the use of strict comes in place. So the use of strict comes at the top of JavaScript document so that it's the first line of code in every document if you want to use the latest feature of JavaScript. So now, you can also put the code below here. If you remember from the previous video, we learned how to print hello world on the screen. So, and we also learned how we can print out this screen. I mean, this word on the screen. So because we have installed a Node.js, we have this command which is node. Then we can put the name of the files which you see here. Then I hit enter, then you see the hello world. So that is something we have covered from the previous videos. So now we are going to learn what is a variable. So a variable is like a storage of your items. So to give you an example, let's say that you have a storage, at your home where you put your goodies, your items, and so on. And for you to have that item be stored in a storage, you need to first have a storage, right? So now in programming, we have that storage, which is a variable. So when you want to define a variable, you use let, and you can put the name of your variable the same way you can name your storage, and you use the equal sign to put something inside that variable. So now I'm going to put my name here, shut that checkbox. Now, this is how you can, define, this is defining the variable and put the name you want. It can be anything you want. Then put the value inside. Now, we can now use our code that we know and love, which is console, then, and we can now print it out. It shows the name on the screen. That is interesting. Now, there is different way of defining variable. You can use some keyword here, which is var. So this is the keyword, this is the name of the variable, and this is the value. So these methods are both right. You can do the same, you can use one of the way you want. So you can use either rate or var keyword. So how about if you want to create, more than one variable? Well, you can, you can obviously create another variable here, or you can put it on the same line. You can put age here, no, age, and you can put 5 here, and it's going to work the same way. You have to notice that I have put the comma here, then add another variable here without adding the keyword here, rate. Because I have already added the rate keyword at the beginning, then there's no need for me to add another rate here. But I can do that if I added the semicolon here. But because it is not a semicolon, now you put the the comma there, then you are ready to go. So now, how do I print out this edge here in this? Remember from the previous video, I told you that the console.log can take as many arguments as you can. Now, let me save it and let me run the program, and you can see that the 4 is also printed, is appended at the end of the string. So now we are good. We know how to define a variable, and we know how that we can put more than one variable on one line, and also those variables are separated by comma. Now, you have noticed that we don't have the data type at the beginning of every variable. So with a normal JavaScript, there's no need of you to define data type such as string, integer, float, and so on. That is not necessary for JavaScript. But with modern JavaScript, such as TypeScript, you can do that, which is going to help you to catch up the errors and other bugs. But for the plain JavaScript, you don't need to have the data type. And that is something to notice here, because I have defined the variable here, and I have assigned the value which happens to be a string. And here I have created a variable called age, and also assigned the variable to an integer, which doesn't care that the data type of the variable. So that's something to notice. So now let's move on. So there is something called naming convention. So why do we need a naming convention in any programming language? Is that even though you can name a variable to anything you want, but in one way or another, you need a way of getting uh, clear about what you have written inside your programming language. So you also need to have, some standard of, differentiating the variables to, for example, classes, to functions, and so on. And this is why programmers came up with a standard way of writing some, uh, you know, variables, naming them. So now the name of variable can contain anything like can contain this, can contain this, and can contain this. So your name can contain all of these three signs, which means the name of variable, like name, date, you can say that name be like this, okay? Or rate, name like this. So let's try it out. So let me say that name equals Richie. Now let me console.log just to see if it works. And let's use code node.index.js. You see that Richie is also printed on screen. So now you can see that starting the variable with underscore, it works. So, but what about if I want to start the variable with this? Let's just see, and then print it out. You can also see that it works. So what about if I want to start the variable with dot? So let me do it. Does it work? Nope, it doesn't work. So the variable cannot start with dot. So let's go back to it. So now we know that in naming variable, you can start with either with underscore or dollar sign, but you cannot start a variable with a dot. Now, now let me name this user name, and let me tell you what I've done here. So you can see that we have user and name, right? It's two words. We have a user and we have a name. So now you can see that on a name I started with a capital letter on a name. So why did I do that? This is called camel case. So the camel case is commonly used. It's commonly used. It's commonly used in programming language just to make variable much more readable. Because if you see user and name, it's clearly for a programmer to read about what is this variable means. So that is called camel case. So now in a variable, the case is really matter. So what do I mean by the cases really matter? So let me put the username here and put it here. So this variable here is different to this variable, because one is camel crest and the other is, lowercase. Okay, and that's something you need to know. Okay, and also we have some reserved keyword. So what do we mean by the reserved keyword? The reserved keyword is that you cannot, for example, use rate. Okay, this will not be possible because the rate keyword is reserved, is only used by JavaScript internally. So you cannot call your JavaScript variable rate or val or return plus the other keywords that we will see. So you cannot use JavaScript keywords to define your variable. So that's what we call reserved names. So every programming language has a reserved keywords that is only reserved for this programming language. So that is something you need to be aware of. So now we have covered the variables, and let me also cover the constant. So what is a constant? You can also declare a constant as you would do with variables. But what is a constant? A constant is something, it's like a variable, but which is not going to change during the compilation or the running of your application. So what do I mean by that? So a variable can change at any time. So I can come here and do username equals user, and this would be fine. If I print username here, if I print username here, you can see that okay, let me do like this. Sorry. You can see that the variable has changed. So we started with a username, username was Richie, right? Then after defining the variable and assigning it to Richie, then we changed the variable to Mura. You can see that the Mora is here, this way. That is what we call a variable because it can change as the program is running. Now, what is a constant? Why do we have a constant? So now let's try to declare a constant here at the bottom here, and let's uh, this here. Let's comment here because I have a name and a name. You cannot have a variable name to a name. You cannot have a variable with the same name as a constant. So now if I try to now, because I have said this is a constant, which means this is not going to change. Okay. Now I try to name it and I change it here to Richie, for example. Let's try to see what happened. Obviously, the program is not going to like it. You can see that um, you can see this error here, assignment to constant variable, which means that it's not possible to reassign, it's not possible to reassign the constant. So when you define a constant is not going to change throughout the program run. So you can make your constant to be, in uppercase or lowercase. Again, JavaScript doesn't care that too much. So another thing is you can see that I'm trying to name the variable to the name that is much more understandable. And that's because I'm a professional programmer. I am so experienced about naming the variable, but also to teach you about naming the variable the right way, because naming the variable will help you understand your program better and also help you to communicate with other programmers that you may work together on the same project. So that is why I strictly recommend you to name your variable the right way. So that's what we covered for today. Thank you for watching our YouTube video tutorials. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and share to your friends. Uh, I'm committed to teach you guys JavaScript and also inspire you about, being programmers, because I believe that it's so possible for Africans to write codes and making money with codes, and I'm so passionate about seeing more programmers being inspired by our programs, and we can be happy if you share the videos to the other people. Thank you so much, and see you in the next part of this course.